Now, the reason why we're doing Iyun Tefillah, the reason why we're looking into prayers today, is because Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, on page 295, launches into a discussion, based on his previous discussion about the benefit of making a bracha, which helps you live in the moment, heightens your awareness as to what's going on in life, and allows you to experience the joys and pleasures of life. He then launches into the other brachot that are contained in our davening, in our daily prayers. Just as an aside, sort of as a preface to this, there is an obligation of prayer for men and for women. There's a biblical obligation for prayer on a daily basis. There's a machlokes in the later authorities as to what degree of prayer applies to women. In other words, everyone agrees that a woman is obligated to pray on a daily basis. But what is the nature of that prayer? How much is she supposed to daven? Is the subject of discussion, and there seems to be more latitude that is granted to the Jewish woman than to the Jewish man as far as the amount and the parameters of the davening. The consensus of the halachic authorities is that a woman should pray at least shacharis, and according to some poskim, she's obligated to pray mincha as well. Women are exempt from davening ma'ariv, because that was only accepted by the men to daven ma'ariv. Ma'ariv was originally an optional prayer. At some point in history, men accepted it upon themselves as an obligatory prayer. So that's why men daven 3 times a day. But women do not have that obligation of davening ma'ariv. Shacharis and mincha, however, they do daven. Now, the focus of the prayers of the day is supposed to be the Amidah, or the Shmona Esrei. And that is therefore the core obligation, to daven Shmona Esrei twice a day, once at Shacharis and once at Mincha. It's also brought down in the poskim that a woman should also say the Birchot HaShachar, the morning blessings, the blessing on the Torah, the blessing of thanksgiving for allowing me to live another day, Elokai Neshama, and after washing the hands and going to the bathroom, making an Al Natilas Yadayim and an Asher Yotzar and so forth. And then doing some structural Pesukei de Zimra. And for each woman it's different. A woman has the latitude to choose for herself what the nature of the Pesukei de Zimra for her is going to be. Whether it's going to be just Baruch She'amar Ashrei and Yishtabach, or whether it's going to be more than that, is at the discretion of the individual. But that's the basis, that's the basic structure of the Pesukei de Zimra. And then, really, from that point onward, from Yishtabach and onward, really a woman is supposed to say the same things as a man. The Yishtabach, and then from Yishtabach there's something called the Birchos Kriya Shema, the blessings of the Shema. And the blessings of the Shema is what Rabbi Yehuda Halevi is talking about today. And there are, in the morning service, there are 2 blessings of Kriya Shema that precede the Shema. And there is one blessing that comes after the Shema. And you wouldn't necessarily notice this looking at the way that the publisher structures the paragraphs. It sometimes could be a little bit misleading. Do you see on page 84 in the Art Scroll Siddur, page 84, 85 in the Art Scroll Siddur, right after you have the Baruch Hu Es Hashem HaMevorach in very large type, which is only recited with a minyan, you have then it says the heading is Birchot Kriyat Shema, the blessings of the Shema. And it starts with the bracha of Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, Yotzer or uvorei choshech, oseh shalom uvorei et hakol. Now this is the beginning of the blessing, and it's a very long blessing. Where does the blessing end? Can anyone tell me where the blessing ends? No, page 80. Yotzer HaMeorot on page 88. Baruch atah Hashem Yotzer HaMeorot. You have a general rule when it comes to davening, that the theme has to be the same at both the beginning and the end of the bracha. You're not allowed to change the theme of the bracha from beginning to end. So thematically, you would expect whatever words were used at the beginning of the bracha to end the bracha as well. So what are the common words between the beginning and the end? Yotzer, that God forms or creates. And we had the word or at the beginning, which is light. And me'orot means the luminaries, the things that give off light. Yes? So it's very clear that this is thematically the beginning and the end of the bracha. What is the second bracha? Well, right after the first bracha is over, we launch into the words Ahava Rabbah, and that is the beginning of the second bracha. Why does it not begin with the words Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, if it's a separate bracha unto itself?
Maybe it continues. It's not continuing in the first one?
It's a separate bracha. It's a totally separate bracha. Why does it not begin with the words Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam? So this is a rule that is universal throughout our prayer service. That normally a bracha that is more than just a one-liner has to begin with the words Baruch atah Hashem and end with the words Baruch atah Hashem. Like this bracha that we just looked at, that began on page 84. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam yotzer or uvorei choshech oseh shalom uvorei es hakol, and ends with Baruch atah Hashem Yotzer HaMeorot. The exception to this rule is what's called a bracha hasmucha lechaverta. When a bracha is adjacent to a prior blessing, you do not need it to open up with the words Baruch atah Hashem. Because since it is adjacent to a previous bracha, the words Blessed are you Hashem are still in our mouths, so to speak. So we use that sort of as both as the end of the previous bracha and the beginning of the next bracha. So therefore, bracha smucha lechaverta is a general rule that is found in the Talmud, that when you have a series of blessings, and you've already said Baruch atah Hashem at the end of the previous bracha, you do not need to start the following bracha with the words Baruch atah Hashem. Now you can understand why the 19 blessings of the Shemona Esrei do not largely start with the words Baruch atah Hashem. Only the first bracha of the Shemona Esrei starts with Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu v'Elokei Avoseinu. And then all succeeding blessings of the Amidah do not start with the words Baruch atah Hashem. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh u'kdoshim b'chol yom yahalalu chasela. That doesn't start with Baruch atah Hashem. Right? It's only when you have a bracha that's a standalone or the beginning of a series. The same thing applies in Birkat HaMazon, where only the first blessing starts off with the words Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam hazanes haolam kulo b'tuvo. And then the next bracha begins with what? Nodeh lecha Hashem Elokeinu. Does not start with Baruch atah Hashem. So it's consistent throughout. There are exceptions to this rule. Can anyone think of an example in benching which is an exception to this rule? No? Very good, Eileen. Right? We end off the third blessing of Birkat HaMazon with Uvinei Yerushalayim HaKodesh b'mheira v'yameinu Baruch atah Hashem bonei v'rachamav Yerushalayim Amen. And then we launch into our fourth bracha of Birkat HaMazon, with the words Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Hakel Avinu Malkeinu Adirenu Boreinu. Why is that? Why don't we start it off with words other than Baruch Atah Hashem like we do with all brachot hasmuchot lechaver tam? So the answer to that question is for the very same reason why we say the word Amen at the end of Uvenei Yerushalayim. Since when do we answer Amen to our own bracha? Isn't that unusual? See, here's what I'd like you to start thinking. There's a whole genre of Jewish literature called Iyun Tefillah. What does Iyun Tefillah mean? Making sense of the words that we say all the time. We sing it with our families, we daven it all the time, but we've rarely taken time to actually allow the words to be analyzed in our minds. The more we say them regularly, the more they become by rote. And we never think about any of these anomalies that appear in the prayer. Why is it that we answer Bonei v'rachamav Yerushalayim Amen? Since when do you say Amen to your own bracha? Why is that? Why is it there? Well, there are a few reasons, but the main reason is because the rabbis felt that it was important to demarcate where biblically Birkat Hamazon ends and where the rabbinic Birkat Hamazon begins. Biblically, there are 3 blessings of Birkat Hamazon. Biblically, there are 3 blessings of Birkat Hamazon. Hazanas Olam Kulo. The next one is Nodeh Lecha Hashem Elokeinu. And the third one is Rachem Hashem Elokeinu Al Yisrael Amecha. Those are the 3 biblical blessings. By the way, it's very rare to find biblically mandated blessings at all. I think that the only 2 examples, there may be more, but the 2 most common examples are the Birkas Hamazon and Birkas HaTorah, the blessing that we say after we ate bread, and the blessing that we make in the morning for Torah study. Those are the only 2 biblical mandated blessings that we say at least regularly. The rabbis for Birkas Hamazon added a 4th blessing, which was Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Hayakel Avinu Malkeinu Adirenu Boreinu Goaleinu Yotzreinu Kiddushenu Kadosh Yaakov Hakel Hagadol Hagibor Behanara Hakel Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tov Uheitiv Umeitiv Uyetiv Lanu. I'm getting mixed up, but those are the words, right? Right? You know the words, right? You just have to sing the words. They added that historically after the 30 years after the Beitar revolt, where after Beitar had fallen, 30 years later, they went to retrieve and bury the bodies, and they found that the bodies had not decomposed. And the rabbis instituted a blessing to thank Hashem for that phenomenon, and they appended it to the Birkas Hamazon. Why is a different discussion? We're not going to get into that now. But it is an additional expression of thanksgiving to Hashem that we make every time we eat a meal. It doesn't sound too appetizing anymore. But that's the reason why the word Amen appears at the end of Uvenei Yerushalayim. It's an Amen of demarcation. It's a dividing line. Benching is over biblically. Let's add one more bracha. And that's the reason why it starts with the words Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, to also indicate that it was an addendum and it was not part of the original sequence of blessings. Because it was added later, it starts again. It's like a reset button or a restart or an addendum to what was originally part of the original series. And that's why the Baruch Atah Hashem appears there. Let's go back to the blessings of Kriya Shema. By the way, here's a great exercise. Every day, take one paragraph of your regular davening and say, I'm going to pretend that I've never seen this before and I've never read this before in my life. Let me look at it critically and try to understand why the rabbis chose the words that they chose and what is the meaning of this blessing. That's what real Iyun Tefillah is. There are many books, even in English, on Iyun Tefillah. And it's a very worthwhile and satisfying endeavor, because you will find that if you do this on a regular basis, your prayers will become much more meaningful to you. You'll have a better understanding of why you're saying the stuff that you're saying. And it won't just come out like an incantation, like you're just uttering magical words, but rather you're saying something that is what the Rambam calls avodah shebalev, really something that comes from your heart. Okay, so here you have the first two blessings. These are the blessings that come before the Kriya Shema. And after Kriya Shema, you have one blessing. Where does the blessing begin and where does that blessing end? Can anyone point that out to me? Also, not readily apparent from the Siddur. What word starts the blessing that comes after Kriya Shema? Yes, excellent. It's the word emet. Emet is the word that starts the blessing that comes after Kriya Shema. And the reason for that is because the third paragraph of Shema, as it appears in the Torah, ends with the words, Ani Hashem Elokechem. I am the Lord thy God. The word emet is the beginning of the rabbinically mandated blessing after Kriya Shema. Now, where does it end? Gal Yisrael, where we launch then at the end of that bracha right into Shemona Esrei. Okay, so far so good. Why doesn't the emet begin with the words Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech HaOlam? The commentaries ask this question and they explain that you view this as a continuation of the bracha before the Shema. You count Shema as being part of this continuum of blessing, and therefore you don't need to start with Baruch Atah Hashem because it's all part of a continuum that where we left off with Baruch Atah Hashem right before the Shema, we continue with that right after the Shema. So you don't need another Baruch Atah Hashem at the beginning. Okay? Each blessing of the blessings of Kriya Shema has its own theme. Each theme is separate, and each theme was instituted by the sages to instill within us some kind of mental image that will properly prepare us for the service of God that is appropriate at that moment. There are two preparatory blessings for the Kriya Shema. The Kriyat Shema itself is a preparation for Shemona Esrei, and therefore the blessing right before, sandwiched in between Kriya Shema and Shemona Esrei, is what we depart the Shema from and launch into a final preparation for Shemona Esrei. If we were to encapsulate the themes of the three blessings, they would be as follows. The bracha of Yotzer HaMe'orot is an examination in our minds of the majesty and wonder of God's creation. That's the theme of the first blessing, the majesty and wonder of God's creation. And the subtext of that theme is how we can learn from the macro creation, from the larger creation, what our duty is to Hashem. And we'll get to that momentarily. The theme of the second bracha of the blessings of Kriya Shema, which starts with the words Ahava Rabbah, or if you're Nusach Sfard, it's Ahavas Olam, is the wonder and majesty of the Torah that God gave us. The theme of the blessing that comes after Kriya Shema is to reflect upon how fortunate we are for having left Egypt at God's hands. How fortunate we are at having left Egypt by God's hand. And of course, it follows as a direct result from the third paragraph of Shema, which has the words, Ani Hashem Elokechem asher hotzesi eschem me'eretz Mitzrayim lios lachem le'elokim. I am the Lord your God who took you out of Egypt so that I could be your Lord, I could be your God. And the Gemara says that this is the perfect theme. This third blessing is the perfect theme to prepare us for Shmona Esrei, because one has to be in a state of joy before beginning the Amidah. But not just a frivolous joy, but a joy of the realization of how blessed I am to be a Jew, how fortunate I am to be one of God's chosen people. Okay? All right, so now we've got the basic structure of Kriya Shema. Let's talk about the first blessing. There's so much I want to talk to you about. I'm not sure if we're just going to be able we'll may only be able just to start today, because then I want to talk about the Parsha. We launch into this blessing, which one of the genius abilities of the rabbis is to weave a tapestry of sub-themes and subtexts into one bracha, which is thematically one, but has many different strands that all relate to that same theme. The theme, as I mentioned, was to reflect upon the majesty and wonder of God's creation and to learn from that larger creation about how to serve and praise Hashem. But within that larger theme, we can find different strands that relate to what's going on in this stage of my life, which is the morning. I'm still a little bit groggy. I've just gotten out of bed. My alarm clock went off not too long ago. I may have taken a quick shower, gotten dressed, washed Nagelwasser, washed my hands. And it's really the first endeavor that I'm engaging in the morning, or one of the first endeavors. And so I want to reflect upon the fact that, just like I did in the Birchas HaShachar, that a tremendous transition has taken place in my life. I've gone from sleeping to awake. And so that's one of the themes of Yotzer Or Uvorei Choshech, that God creates light and creates darkness. Oseh Shalom Uvorei Sakol. He makes peace and creates everything. Now, this bracha is based on a verse from Isaiah. Is it Isaiah? Yes, it's Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 45. However, the rabbis in their wisdom just changed one word from the verses that appears in Isaiah. In Isaiah, it's Yotzer Or Uvorei Choshech, Oseh Shalom Uvorei Tara. They ended off that, what Isaiah does is he creates, this is really a theology, a theodicy statement, that God is responsible for both good and evil in life. But the rabbis felt that this was not appropriate to end a bracha with the word ra, which is evil. So they said that God, instead of saying that uborei tara, that God creates evil, they said God creates everything. But sort of like a euphemism to reflect upon the fact that there is both light and dark in life, both on a physical level that is observable. We just went through nighttime and now it is morning and life transitions, but also on a figurative level as well. We all go through periods and waves in life of darkness and light, and so this too comes from Hashem, and that's one of the themes of this bracha. You'll notice that when we want to talk about God acting as a creator of light, it uses one verb. And when we talk about God as a creator of darkness, we use another verb. What they both mean to create or to form. What is the difference between Yotzer and Borei? Does anyone know? Can anyone think of a substantive difference between Yotzer and Borei? The word borei is the Torah's way of describing how Hashem created the universe in Genesis at the very beginning. And yet, over here, when we talk about God creating light, it doesn't say bara, it says yotzer. So what's the difference? The commentaries point out that bari'ah and yitzirah are two acts of creation, but one is active and one is passive. Yitzirah is active creation, where it's manifest, at least on a human observable level, that a proactive creation is taking place, that God inserts light into the world. And bari'ah is where God, through an act of withdrawal, creates a vacuum of darkness. So there is that idea, even within the blessings that we say in the morning, that there's an inherent difference between light and darkness. They may seem to be 50-50, they may seem to be on equal par, but one is an active creation of Hashem, light, and one is created as a result of God withdrawing himself from existence, or from, on some esoteric level, from the material in question. And so when the Torah talks about Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, it really harkens back to what the Kabbalists describe in their description of creation, which is the act of tzimtzum, the act of reduction or withdrawal. And God withdrew his essence in order to allow a physical world to manifest itself. And that's really what all physicality is, because before God creates the physical world, all that exists is God. In order for there to exist anything independent of Hashem, the description of the Kabbalah is that Hashem withdraws his essence to some degree, whatever that means, and allows in that vacuum something less than God to fill it. And that is the physical world that we live in. So that's Bari'ah, and Yitzirah is God infusing himself back into that creation. Okay, so we've just finished the first line of this blessing. We'll continue Be'ezrat Hashem next week.